bad. This is why the NFL playoffs are better than any playoffs in professional sports that we have. So much parity, any given Sunday, win or go home. This is as good as it gets. Win or go home. There's tons of parity. And in a year that we have young contenders becoming in front of our eyes, this is amazing. Let's take a trip up to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania right quick. I want to start off there. Why were the Jaguars underdogs? Why were they underdogs? They had gone to Pittsburgh. They had flexed their muscles. There are two things that travel in football. That's a good offensive line and a good defense. And the Jaguars, frankly, they have both. Mike Tomlin was exposed. The coaching, they stood a no chance against Doug Marrone and his staff. They were outclassed. Big Ben did what Big Ben does, threw the ball all over the place, had a few turnovers. And outside of two, last heave type of touchdowns, the Jaguars win this game by 14 points, 20 points. They took them to the back of the shed. This was the old school beatdown. And coaching played a huge part here. The Steelers pulled within 7 points, and they had over 2 minutes remaining in the fourth quarter. 2 timeouts. Mike Tomlin calls for an onside kick, okay, which led to Josh Lambo hitting a 45-yard field goal. They put up Jacksonville up 45-35. But that's not where my problem is. My bigger problem was on the last drive when they just bled the entire clock. They had that touchdown with, as time expired, 1 second left or whatnot. That does nothing for me. That does nothing for your team. You should have taken a field goal attempt with, about 50 seconds left or whatever it would have been. Then, attempted another onside kick. Then you give yourself a fighting chance. If you were to recover that kick. And the way Big Ben was throwing the ball all across the field, you can make the argument that, it would have been possible. I give them a better than 50-50 chance that they could have made a big play down the field. But you bleed the clock, score a touchdown with 1 second left or whatever it was, and the game's over. Turned out that field goal that Josh Lambo hit after the onside kick was the difference of the game as they lost 45-42. But nonetheless, this was just an awful showing by the Pittsburgh coaching staff. Todd Haley, get this guy out of town. He's a troublemaker, likes to hang out at bars and get into fights at night. Get him out of town, all right? The play calling was awful. One play specifically stood out to me. On fourth down, it was 4th and 1. The Steelers are fighting back to get in the game. You have a big quarterback in Big Ben under the center. You have Le'Veon Bell, who's the best, if not the best, maybe a top 3 running back in the NFL. And you choose to go with a play-action pass? Seriously? On 4th and 1, Jacksonville territory. That's the play call you dial up? Get Todd Haley out of get Haley out of town. And Doug Marrone and his staff completely dominated the coaching game. And this shouldn't shock us. Jacksonville dominated in week 5. They dominated. This is a good team. You can make an argument that if Blake Bortles, obviously if he plays better, this team is, a top 1 or 2 seed. Period. And when Blake Bortles doesn't throw an interception, the Jaguars are 10-0. So they can win with this guy when he doesn't screw up and make the bad plays that he's known for making at times. It's how they do it, though. The first 3 quarters, Blake Bortles may have had 80 yards through the air. Then, boom. He comes through in the fourth quarter, making plays down the field, makes a pass when he needs to. And they held off a comeback attempt by the Steelers. This was clutch. And, Jacksonville's number 1 defense gave up almost 600 yards of offense, 42 points, which was a garbage, few points involved in that 42. But Jacksonville needed all the points that they can get. And this was very, very, very important for the offense's confidence going into Foxborough next week. And I think the Jaguars stand a chance to go in and beat Tom Brady in Foxborough. And you know what? That's where I'm going to put it at. I think that the Jaguars will beat Tom Brady. Whenever you see Tom Brady get pressured, that's when the trouble came. Early on in the Super Bowl versus the Falcons, the Giants, Super Bowls, when you get pressure in his face, which the Jacksonville Jaguars will do, you stand a chance. And nobody on that New England defense would start out, maybe McCourty. But outside of McCourty, there's not one guy on that New England defense that I would say, go down to Jacksonville and you will start. Both their corners would be second team guys. They'd be nickel. Jacksonville is the class, the defensive class in the AFC right now, and they stand a really, really good chance. And I think they beat Tom Brady and the Patriots next week. Big Ben. He came out and said he's not going to retire. I don't know. He's 35 years old. Probably be 36, I guess. Next year, during the season. The Steelers got to get a replacement for this guy. Yeah, he chucks the ball around, but he just doesn't have it anymore. This is going to be a really, really interesting postseason. You have the Le'Veon Bell situation hanging over your head. This is going to be an important offseason for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's go up to Minnesota as the Vikings survived a thriller against the New Orleans Saints. The Saints started off extremely slow, and they made a valiant comeback just to see, which was already I would have punched my ticket to the NFC Championship round, and just to have it taken away from you by a bonehead play by a good player, it was awful to see. Where do we start? They were down. Marcus Williams, who had a beautiful interception earlier in the game to allow the New Orleans Saints to get the momentum shifted and get the ball rolling for their comeback. And he made one of the worst mistakes I've ever seen. And I've been watching the game for a while. I've played the game collegiately, and I don't know if I've seen a mistake with that magnitude made before. The Saints were down 20. What were they down? 17-0 at half. And Drew Brees is down 2 points or so, 1 point I believe. And there was a minute 30 seconds left. There's nobody you'd rather have. I was saying I'm watching the game. I'm like, yeah, just Drew Brees. He has it in the bag. Settle for the field goal. They go up. And that's where all hell breaks loose. Down 24-23, 10 seconds left. Case Keenum just lobs it up, desperation pass to Stephon Diggs, and that's where you see Marcus Williams, the Saints' great rookie, lost vision of the ball. He didn't know where he was, and he just whiffs. And that's how you got that 61-yard walk-off grand slam type of touchdown from Minnesota. That was one of the most thrilling endings of a game I've ever seen, honestly. And, Minnesota hasn't really fared too well in the playoffs. I know their fan base. You have Gary Anderson versus the Falcons. You had Blair Walsh a few years ago against Seattle. Fran Tarkenton. And all odds are stacked against these guys. And when they are stacked up against Drew Brees, future Hall of Famer, none of it mattered. And this is going to be the season where the NFL team hosting the Super Bowl actually plays in it, because they're going to be Philadelphia. They're going to beat Philadelphia next week in the NFC Championship and have a home game for the Super Bowl. Patriots. What? The Tennessee Titans didn't deserve to be here. I can't say they didn't deserve. They earned the right when Kansas City dropped the ball last week. But look, come on. They stood no chance going into Foxborough, and Corey Davis made a grabbed a nice touchdown first quarter, but after that it was Patriots. Patriots, from then on, they scored 35 consecutive points before another garbage time touchdown by the Titans. They dominated all throughout. Tom Brady, 35 of 53 for 337 with 3 scores, no interceptions. And who do we have? We had Deion Lewis, we had Rob Gronkowski, Danny Amendola. I think they all combined 26 of 32 targets, and they put together 272 yards. And New England, with 31 first downs, 438 yards in offense, they put on a clinic. They put on. They give Bill Belichick a week off to prepare against a team like Tennessee. They stood no chance. They were clearly outmatched, and they didn't belong in the playoffs. Period. They didn't belong in the playoffs, and that's what happens. The cream rises to the top, and knowingly they sank. So that's what we expected. It's what we expected, but it's still impressive. All these guys get paid, and so whenever you can go out there and dominate, it's still impressive. So we can go towards Mike Mularkey. Get this guy out of town. Get this guy out of town. I know reports were he's going to get extension. Get him out of town. Mariota hasn't improved under him. He's wasting a good talent in Mariota. The team doesn't really respond to him. It's just not really a surprise. This guy's over his head. Just get him out. He's not really a good coach. Mariota has regressed under Mularkey, and they're not a playoff caliber team. So just get him out and let's keep it moving. But Drew Brees, let me rewind back to Minnesota. I want to talk about Drew Brees right quick. This guy is still a legend. I want to make sure we get this in. Still a legend, and this was a heartbreaking loss in Minneapolis, and Brees is going to have to live with this for the rest of his life. He did everything he could, everything in his power to come back from 17 down in the third quarter against that defense. Come on. And without that miracle of an ending, the miracle in Minnesota, the Saints would have had the second greatest comeback in playoff history behind the New England Patriots against the Falcons. So, Brees went 24 of 40, almost 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Did throw 2 picks, though. And all 3 of those touchdowns came in the second half. And those 2 interceptions came before halftime. So it was a tale of 2 halves. Led the Saints to 17 fourth-quarter points. And this was an improved defense under Dennis Allen. A top-tier rushing attack with Ingram and Kamara. He's still one of the best in the NFL. Period. And it just sucks for guys like him. Father Time is undefeated. His clock is beginning to wind up a little bit faster, and you would have loved to see him in another opportunity to get another ring. But hey, that's the way the ball rolls sometimes. Let's see, Steve Sarkisian. Awful. He is a big problem for Atlanta. Matt Ryan is also a problem for Atlanta, but I don't want to get into all that. I think Matt Ryan is utterly overrated. When you get him out of what he's supposed to do, he just drops the ball. He can't do much when what he thinks is there is not there. But this guy Steve Sarkisian, he was in over his head, much like the offensive coordinator Todd Downing in Oakland for the Raiders this year. This guy Sarkisian was in over his head, and we saw that from how they went up against Jim Schwartz in the Eagles defense, who's a top tier defense. These guys mean business. They'll be the only reason that the Vikings in the Vikings game next week will be a match, because I don't think Nick Foles is doing too much next week. The play that I want to talk about is fourth down, goal to go, game on the line, last play of the game for them, and the personnel that he had, that whole drive. He had Teron Ward in, the third string running back in on that drive. Ride with your dogs. Tevin Coleman, Devontae Freeman. There's no reason someone like Ward should be in the game. And then you got the fullback on that fourth down, split out wide. That fullback Coleman split out wide. He poses no threat for the opposing defense. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And how do you give the ball to Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman 20 times? Not 20 times each, 20 times combined. In a game that was perfect for taking advantage of the weather. It was a little chilly out there. Keep the ground and pound type of game plan. You have the offensive line to do it. You have the talent in the backfield to do it. What are you doing, dude? 20 times between those two? He's really in over his head. And it was apparent. It's not, you can't compare him to last year and the years past with Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan is a mastermind. Obviously, you see what he's doing in San Francisco right now. But the disparity in overall the performance from Shanahan to Sarkisian is pretty obvious. And in reality, that is the reason why Atlanta won't be NFC in the NFC Championship game for the second year in a row, as they lost 15-10 to the Eagles. Nick Foles was all right. He was all right. Not saying he's gonna do that next week, which I don't think any of us will really believe. But he was all right. He held his own. He started out shaky. But he's a stopgap starter, and he does what's needed of him. He went 23 of 30, 246 yards. He threw no interceptions. And these were less than perfect passing conditions over in Philadelphia, which, like I said, why didn't Sarkisian ride the backs of Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman? I'm not sure. But this was a good effort by Nick Foles and helped that team reach the NFC Championship. I don't know what's going to go on next week against the Vikings, but I can't expect Foles to lead them. He's going to have another game to where he doesn't turn the ball over, and if they want to make it to the Super Bowl. And but when you have a defense like the Eagles do, hey, something to pay attention to. Alrighty, well, that's it. That's my takeaways from the NFL Divisional Playoffs. I have next week the Vikings beating the Eagles. I have the Jaguars. I'm going on the limb. I got the Jaguars beating Tom Brady and the Patriots in Foxborough. And we'll get on paper a good game. Super Bowl, Vikings versus Jaguars. Ratings might not like it. The NFL might not prefer it. Their darling Patriots will be out of it. But that's what I think, and let's see. Alrighty, y'all. Get back to it. Have a good one.